Everyone, thank you very much for joining our session today on the art and science of developing customer success managers who truly love their job. My name is Chris McNamara. I'm the Vice President of Customer Success at Glassdoor. And as you can probably tell, I'm not from around here. I'm from the South, the very deep South. In fact, my hometown is Sydney, Australia. And I started my career as a management consultant with a company which was called Booz Allen Hamilton at the time. It's now known as Strategy and. After a career of roughly 4.5 years as a consultant, I applied to business school in the United States and was fortunate enough to be accepted at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, where I completed my MBA in 2009. It's probably the worst time ever to graduate from an MBA program. It was right in the middle of the global financial crisis. And I decided to go back home to Sydney, mostly because I missed friends and family. I took a job with a large Australian financial services company running strategy for that business before joining a friend who had started a jobs marketplace. And in that company, I was the Chief Operating Officer. Last year, I joined Glassdoor as the Vice President of Customer Success, having built over the previous 5 years as the COO a customer success and customer support function at that jobs marketplace. A little background on Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a recruiting company, and our vision is to help people find jobs and companies that they love. So the concept of staff engagement, staff happiness, employee happiness is something that we're really passionate about. But perhaps you're asking yourselves the question, does it really matter whether my CSMs or our CSMs love their work? And I think the answer is yes. There are at least 3 reasons why I think this is something that you all should pay attention to. So the first reason is that engaged employees have significantly higher productivity than employees that aren't engaged. Over the last 5 years, Gallup has conducted a number of studies of the link between employee productivity and engagement. And basically what they find is that disengaged employees report significantly higher rates of absenteeism and errors than employees that are engaged. Employees who are engaged are also far more likely to demonstrate excellent performance when compared to employees that are not engaged. And perhaps the most concerning thing is that Gallup finds that 60 to 70% of people in their work are not loving their job. They're not actively engaged. And so this is likely a challenge in all of our companies and to a degree within all of our teams. The second reason that I think that you should care about this is that engagement impacts the customer experience. For the best part of the last 30 years, Richard Branson has been touting the benefits of happy employees leading to happy customers. And this is fundamental to the way that Virgin does business. Their modus operandi is to go into industries and disrupt those industries on 2 dimensions. One is customer service and the other dimension is cost. And they fundamentally have a belief that you can provide great customer experiences at a low cost. And they've done that in multiple industries. But is there actual science behind this belief that there is a linkage between happy employees and better customer experiences? And in fact, there is. So an organization called BI Worldwide, who basically consult related to engagement, find that engaged employees are more innovative and that engaged employees are less likely to leave. And that is an outcome that is also supported by the work that Gallup's done. And as a consequence of those 2 things, engaged employees are more likely to have expertise that is valuable for your customers. They're more likely to develop innovative solutions that help drive your business model forward. And for these 2 reasons, the customer experience that can be driven by employees that are engaged is significantly better than those when they're feeling indifferent or feeling disengaged. In addition, there's also findings that directly suggest that customer retention is higher when employees are more engaged. And a study by CVent basically found that customer retention was 18% higher for a sample of B2B and B2C companies that they analysed for those organisations where employees were significantly engaged. So for all of these reasons, employee engagement can impact customer experience. But there's research that suggests it won't always impact the customer experience. It's possible to be unhappy in your job and still create reasonable customer experiences. But the reasonableness, the okay customer experience is not really what we're driving for in our roles. We're trying to create exceptional experiences, the types of experiences that create net promoter outcomes that result in advocates and customer retention. And the data suggests that indifferent or disengaged employees will not do that for you. So the third reason that I think you should pay attention to this is that engagement predicts financial performance. And there's research that suggests that organisations with highly engaged employees are more revenue productive than peer organisations. And Glassdoor has actually done a whole bunch of research that links certain factors like return on assets, stock market performance, and market valuation to the company ratings that we collect from our users. And you might be surprised to know that a recent study of Glassdoor ratings found that companies that have increasing ratings on Glassdoor demonstrate double the annualized stock market returns of the lowest performing companies with respect to their rating on Glassdoor. Who's heard of Glassdoor's Best Places to Work awards? Most people, that's great. The best place, we recently analysed best places to work to understand the relationship between best places to work and company performance. And we found that Glassdoor's Best Places to Work award winners outperform the S&P 500 by 122%. If you're at the bottom of the Glassdoor Best Places to Work list, if you're at the bottom of the kind of company ratings on Glassdoor, you underperform the S&P 500 by about 30%. You might look at that data and go, Chris, dude, it's correlation. Like, it doesn't prove that just because people are disengaged, it results in poor performance. And that would be a fair hypothesis. But actually, there are a number of quantitative studies that specifically look at whether engagement drives better performance or not. And there's research that indicates that the relationship between engagement and performance is causal, like it goes in the direction that you would want it to go in. And one study in particular found that increasing Glassdoor ratings by 1 star adds 8% to your market value. It's crazy. It's so that the linkage is surprisingly strong. And for all of these reasons, I think that there is a meaningful amount of science that suggests there is a linkage between engagement and customer experience, engagement and productivity, engagement and performance of the company. So the natural next question that you would ask is, okay, all right, so I buy that. What are the factors that influence engagement? And this is a topic that Glassdoor can weigh into because we collect a lot of user-generated data about employee engagement. Each salary review, each company rating is a piece of user-generated data. And we recently conducted a study of 200,000 pieces of user-generated content by individual employees or former employees, people who left both a review and, a company review and a salary review. And as you would expect, pay is a factor. It influences engagement. Like you can't get away from the fact that pay influences employee engagement. But it's not the most important factor. And the two other factors that most significantly impact employee engagement are culture and career progression. And this is where the art of developing CSMs who love their job really comes into play. Because there's no specific playbook. There isn't science. Like I can't get up here and tell you exactly what you need to do in order to create a culture and career progression that will ensure that all of your CSM teams love their jobs. I can share with you, though, some of my experiences tackling this exact challenge. So I mentioned to you that in my job, I joined Glassdoor roughly 9 months ago, and in a moment I'm going to talk to you exactly about the challenges of career progression that we observed within the Glassdoor customer success teams. But before doing that, we've studied within Glassdoor a whole bunch of situations where employees change jobs. So we recently conducted a study of 5,000 job transitions. And we find that job transitions are really frequent. In fact, people change jobs every 18 months on average. And these transitions, they can be internal or external. Any guesses on what percentage of job transitions are external? Just yell it out. Thoughts? 80, 90? It's a good guess. It's really high. It's higher than what I would have anticipated. So it's 73%. Like every time someone changes a job, there's a 73% chance, this is what our data suggests, that they have moved organizations. They didn't change jobs within their current employer. And that should be a concern for all of us. Like this is a call to action. Because unless we have career progression and career development opportunities for our CSMs, the majority of those people are going to end up leaving the business. Our research also finds that companies that offer more career opportunities, because we ask employees to assess to what extent they appreciate or rate the career opportunities at their current employer, we find that the companies that have greater career opportunities are statistically more likely to retain their employees. Okay, so career stagnation, it drives attrition within your teams. So paying attention to career opportunities and career development is important. And this was a challenge for me coming into my role at Glassdoor. Roughly 9 months ago, I arrived at Glassdoor, and one of the first things that I did was complete a survey for within our customer success manager teams. And I asked them about their experience at Glassdoor, and here's some of what I heard back. We need a clearly defined set of responsibilities and how our success will be measured. We need more focus on development of employees and room for growth. There are career opportunities, but there's no visibility into what it takes to actually get there. I would like to have a more clearly defined career path and understanding of how to advance. Like these are common concerns. Like I imagine there are people in your organizations that have these same concerns. And these are verbatims from Glassdoor staff. Like we're a transparent company. I have no problems sharing this with you today. And faced with this feedback, the challenge for me is thinking about, well, what am I going to do about that? And the starting point, in my view, for career development in any organization is building a really robust competency framework. Something that helps your teams understand these are the skills required to be successful in your role. Here's how we're going to measure your performance. This is a tool for your managers and your team leaders to provide really high quality feedback to your individual contributors on how they can improve and develop. And we didn't have that. Like this foundational part of creating career development opportunities for people, it was missing. And so we started by building a competency framework. And just to touch on what that actually is, like a competency is a characteristic necessary to do the job. Like these aren't roles and responsibilities. It's knowledge, it's skills, it's attributes or qualities, it's measurable, it's coachable, and it's observable. Like these are the characteristics of things that you should capture within competency frameworks that you develop. So for our competency framework at Glassdoor, we identified 5 kind of core competencies that we expect our CSMs to develop and demonstrate, and that we commit to our CSM teams to assist them in developing. And those competencies include product, systems, and technical expertise. You've got to know the product, guys. You've got to be experts in the product. No one should be more expert in the product than the CSM. That's our view. Analytical skills and problem solving. Every day you're going to encounter challenging problems from customers. You have to have the skill you need to be able to solve those problems on the fly. Managing work and collaboration. You guys work across multiple teams within the organization. Within our company, you work with technical teams, you work with the sales team, you work with marketing. You have to be able to collaborate effectively across those teams. You need to be able to manage your own workload. You need to be able to hit timelines effectively and prioritize effectively. Fourthly, leading people. And as an individual contributor, the amount of leading people that you would do is probably limited, but it's important not just to focus on the skills that you need as an individual contributor, because if you do that, then how are you helping people to understand what their potential career development opportunities are? So leading people is a competency that primarily relates to our team leaders and managers, but we call it out as being a competency that's relevant for all of our CSMs. And then lastly, communication and emotional intelligence. Communication in both its written and verbal forms, and emotional intelligence, empathy, being resilient, being able to understand and read how individuals are feeling and behaving accordingly. So, I won't go into tons of detail on a specific example, but I wanted to kind of touch on a couple of things. So, on this page, moving from left to right, you have the 3 different levels of CSMs at Glassdoor. Individual contributor on the far left. In the middle, we have a senior individual contributor, the senior CSM. And on the right, you have the first step into a management career. And what I've captured on the page, this is not all-encompassing. This is not every competency or capability that we would ask our CSMs to develop. But moving from left to right, a couple of things that I would point out. Firstly, the skills develop over time. The skills build on one another. So on the far left, you have the most basic set of skills. On the far right, the most advanced. But we would expect a team leader or a manager to be able to do everything that a CSM can do effectively. How can you coach someone on being effective unless you can do the things that they can do? And we require our team leaders and managers to be able to develop all of these skills. Secondly, moving from left to right, we publish this competency framework as is to everyone. So you don't just see the competencies required for your current role, you see the next step up and the step beyond that, so that you can understand, here's how your skills would need to evolve so that you can take the next step in your career. And this has been massive for our team because we haven't had that level of transparency in the past. People just did not understand how their careers could develop at Glassdoor, or the skills that they should be working on in order to advance. So, what have been the results of this initiative? When I arrived at Glassdoor 9 months ago, part of the reason that I ran that survey that I described to you was because staff engagement, employee happiness, whatever you'd like to call it, it was a challenge within our customer success organization. And we had amongst the lowest engagement scores in our entire company. And that's something that I've really wanted to tackle and address. In addition to that low engagement, we saw one of the highest levels of attrition. And over the trailing 12 months, we had lost over 30% of our customer success team. You just can't do the job that you want to be able to do for your clients if you lose 30% of the team year on year. And it's something that we've been very aggressive in trying to tackle. So the first result that I'm really proud of is we've seen a steady increase in engagement, which we measure using a tool called Glint. We conduct these Glint surveys once a quarter, and it's based on the kind of Net Promoter Score methodology. The second outcome that I'm really proud of is that we had 0 attrition last quarter. No one left the business last quarter. That is awesome. We set ourselves this aspirational goal, myself and the CS leadership team, of not having anyone leave the company this quarter, and we managed to achieve that. In fact, in the last 5 months, we haven't had anyone leave the organization. This quarter, we've grown the team by almost 50%, and almost half the people that are joining our team are coming from internal hires. And you can't do that unless people are feeling good about their work. Like, no one is going to tell their friends and colleagues to come and work in CS unless they're feeling positive about the future of the organization and their opportunities for development and growth. The fact that customer success has become internally recognized as a great place to work is something that I'm really proud of. So, if I can leave you with a handful of recommendations to take away from our session today. The first recommendation is that you should pay attention to the engagement of your teams. If you're not already measuring engagement, find a way to do it. You don't need an out-of-the-box piece of software like Glint to do it. Like, you can create a simple survey monkey and send a survey to your teams that takes a pulse on how they're feeling. Don't do it once a year. Like, do it more frequently than that. If you haven't done it in 12 months' time, like, do it now. Go and do it next week and find out how your teams are feeling. Secondly, seek to understand the drivers of engagement. And it's different in every organization. So what I described to you before, compensation, culture, and career progression, these are the factors that most commonly present themselves in the data that we see at Glassdoor as drivers of engagement. But every company is different. And I can't tell you what the answer will be to drive engagement at your specific organization or within your specific team. Only you can answer that question. You should, however, assess pay, career progression, and culture because these are things which we know are common issues. You should do things like benchmark salaries. You should have things like competency frameworks. And you should understand, like, what type of culture do we want to create as leaders in this business? And how do we recognize when individuals are demonstrating the right values? And how do we hold people accountable when they're not demonstrating the right values? In addition to developing competency frameworks themselves, I would encourage you to think about career paths. And that is the next kind of natural step to take once you've defined a framework, because the framework itself just illustrates the skills that your CSMs will need to be successful. It doesn't tell you the different paths that you could take from CS to sales or from CS to BizOps or within the CS team, like what are the different paths that you can take. And people want to know those paths. So extend beyond just defining the framework and try to identify some of those paths for people. And then last but not least, repeat steps 1 through 4, rinse and repeat. Like, this is not something you can do just once. You should be doing this over and over again because how your employees feel about their work, it evolves over time. And as you step through this process, the issues that drive their engagement, those will also evolve. So with that, I'm going to pause for questions.
Okay, how do you measure something like prioritizing effectively?
Yeah, so the competency framework that I put up before, all of this is powered by a review process that collects feedback from multiple stakeholders. And so the way that I would measure prioritizing effectively is firstly collecting feedback from that individual's manager, and secondly, collecting feedback from other individuals that individual works with where there are dependencies. So at Glassdoor, a CSM might work with a technical services team member who is responsible for implementing aspects of the product. They then pick up that case and then proceed with onboarding the client. Now, if there's a communication breakdown, if there's not good collaboration between those individuals, if they're not making the right decisions about which cases to prioritize based on the size of a client, on the urgency of the issue, then that should come through in the feedback that you collect from those stakeholders. So some of these outcomes, they need to be measured through that type of feedback because they won't be directly observable as like a number. Yeah. Yes.
Kind of a bit of a follow-on to that. Can you talk a little bit about, I think of this as a good kind of qualitative set of, characteristics, but
Yes.
but what about hard quantitative metrics? So
Yeah.
In your experience, how did you actually goal the CSMs from a quantitative perspective?
Yeah. And within Glassdoor, we separate the process of evaluating individuals against their competency framework from assessing individuals against the business goals that we know are linked to creating value for our customers. And some of the goals that we have created for our team relate specifically to things like, how effective are we at helping our customers to optimize the performance of their product? And we have a goal called pacing. That's not going to mean anything to this audience, but pacing is a specific goal that relates to how effective is a CSM at managing the budget that they're entrusted with by the client organizations who are giving us jobs budget to spend on their behalf. So we would measure the pacing for that particular CSM. We measure a whole bunch of other KPIs, and ultimately by CSM and by CSM team, we measure revenue retention. And that is the overarching goal that we look at as defining kind of our business success. To what extent are we retaining revenue for the clients that we're managing? Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned, obviously, circa 50% increase in the team, and you mentioned how important that was to do internally.
Yep.
With internal hires. Was there a trend in your organization where those hires came from different departments?
Yeah. One of the most interesting trends I think I would observe is that many of those hires came from our sales team.
Okay.
And in the past, that wouldn't have happened. I think in the past, the relationship between sales and CS was far less collaborative than what we would observe today. And part of what I think we've done over the course of the last 2 quarters is that by investing in things like defining the competency framework and then training our CSMs to develop these skills, we've helped other organizations understand the competency and capability that we have, firstly. And that's made us, I think, a more attractive destination for people from the sales organization, as well as others. We've received applications from other internal functions like sales operations as well. But the majority of people actually came from the sales org.
This is a follow-on from his. How did you go about educating the rest of your company on the competencies you built out and that new kind of culture in CS?
Yeah, well, we started by communicating this framework within the customer success organization. So we started with our CSM teams, and then we published it to each of the teams within customer success that are not CSM teams. So within my org, I look after technical services, I look after customer support, and then I look after a set of CSM teams. And to the prior question, a number of those other internal hires, outside of sales, they came from those other internal CS teams. So we made sure that each of the teams within customer success understood the competency framework for our CSMs and vice versa. So this exercise that I just described to you, we published these competencies for technical services managers and for customer support representatives as well to everyone within CS. So everyone within CS knows the competencies that every other person is assessed on. Like we've been very transparent around that. The second thing that we did was we went out to other organizations that we partner closely with. We booked time in their weekly team meeting, and we basically took 20 minutes on the agenda to walk them through some of this competency framework. And what I would say is that prior to getting to that point of communicating or publishing the competencies, we had actually gathered input from some of those other stakeholders along the way. So it was not surprising for many of those other organizations within Glassdoor to see the types of things that we landed on because they'd had input into that process as well. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.